Columbia University's meta-analysis called CASA Columbia, Closing the Gap Between Science and Practice, reveals a 50-year gap or lag time between what is known in the research world and what is available in the practitioner world of addiction treatment. In other words, the best treatment the consumer can get today in 2021 is perhaps 50 years behind cutting-edge research. Let me give you concrete examples. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Mark Gold contributed understanding of the physiological withdrawal from cocaine. But if you asked the best treatment center that you know, you would be told that cocaine withdrawal is only psychological. This illustrates a 40-year lag in information. The substance use industry is predominantly built upon the 12-step Hazelden model, which was developed in the 50s and 60s. Scientists Marco Layton and Paul Benzino recommend a neurodevelopmental treatment model of addiction due to the understanding of dopamine deregulation. And this is what's known and accepted in the research world, but it shows a 60-year lag between the research world and the practitioner world. Kenneth Bloom's theory of reward deficiency syndrome has 50 years of research support. Some are informed in the research world, many are not. But there's a new paradigm that recognizes RDS as the disease and addiction as the symptom. Research advancements have offered enlarged perspective from many adjacent or interactive sciences like neurology, genetics, and epigenetics. In 2021, the cause of addiction is known to be an interaction of genetic and epigenetic influences. Reward deficiency syndrome is the term used for dopamine deregulation, or the disruption that pre-exists in some individuals and which is certainly made worse by using. If you take away anything from this presentation, I hope it's the following. 1, the genetics of addiction must be addressed in the practitioner treatment world. 2, addressing neurological challenge is essential to brain stabilization. And 3, the L Foundation is providing access to reward deficiency syndrome solutions right now. Reward deficiency syndrome is the new phenotype for addictions and impulsive, obsessive compulsive behavioral expressions. It's the common denominator or rubric linking all addictions. And this changes the recovery landscape by requiring a new treatment paradigm. The science of RDS solutions and the new fields of psychiatric genetics and neuropsychology offer hope for patients like myself who experienced a revolving door of substance use disorder treatment and who felt like they fell through the cracks in the traditional treatment system. The GARS test is already on the market, and as it did in my case, the results informed selection of a proper pharmaceutical regimen. So it cut out the guesswork. While scientists feel comfortable in their understanding of dopamine dysfunction, bear in mind that there are 100 neurotransmitters and each one is influential. Studies of serotonin and norepinephrine suggest their deregulation is also causal influence. But what I want the layperson listening to understand that in vitro, those studies that isolate a neurotransmitter so that we can examine them outside the whole, it makes it seem very simple. But in vivo, which is in a living system, there's an interconnectedness, which is much more complicated. There are 100,000 action potentials or neurological events every second. Those individuals with multiple addictions and comorbidity most probably had neurogenetic challenges before addiction began. Dopamine deficiency contributes to devastation across many realms and over the lifespan. So scientists zoom in to examine genetics through electron microscopes and have discovered about 100 genes which are correlational to addiction. The GARS test identifies the 10 most predominant. Zooming outward, to look at an individual's history over their entire lifespan shows patterns of commonality. RDS is correlational to the following. 1, early trauma, adverse experiences of abuse. 2, ADD or ADHD, including adult versions. 3, the Asperger autism spectrum. The depression spectrum, including bipolar or PTSD, and unfortunately increased risk for dementia, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. So continuing care for RDS addiction treatment is imperative to achieve and maintain dopamine homeostasis. Research shows that those with more than one substance use disorder, process, or behavioral addiction, such as in gambling, eating, and sexual disorders, and or psychiatric comorbidity as an impulsive obsessive compulsive diseases, ADHD, PTSD, bipolar, depression, etc., we experience drastically diminished quality of life as compared to populations which do not have such extreme neuropsychological impairment. And this same population experiences drastically lower recovery rates within the existing traditional substance use disorder and psychiatric treatment protocol. So this is RDS Science and Solutions is my attempt to bring a missing piece of the puzzle to the public. And my job is basically, I'm reviewing the research of these geniuses and trying to transcribe it from the language of neuroscience into the language of psychology. Okay, when we interviewed the patients, from their experience, they related that addiction to them is both a state of deficiency as well as a state or condition of inflicted self-harm. Participants revealed that they felt like they had lived in a continuous, unsatiable state of deficiency. It didn't matter how much they used or how hard they tried. They felt like they could not get back up to zero or normal. Us researchers know that what they're describing is the anhedonic state of dopamine depletion. These same participants elaborated on the addictive condition of participating in self-harm, whether that be in the form of physical self-harm, as in taking drugs, or cutting oneself. They also experience self-harm in the form of their self-talk, self-concept, and through their negative thoughts about their self-worth. Surveyed addicts report that the experience of devastation across many realms or dimensions of being include genetic, neurology, psychology, cognition, emotion, social relations, economic and financial stability, legal and criminal justice issues, but also in the realms of spirit, love, hope, the numinous, the transpersonal, and existential. Brain imaging techniques provide a wealth of data for the analysis of neural activity. MRIs can show portions of the brain which are either enlarged or diminished due to drug use. Functional MRIs compare changes in magnetic fields associated with blood oxygenation and deoxygenation ratios. Increased blood oxygenation is interpreted as increased brain activity. Functional magnetic resonance imaging and functional near-infrared spectroscopy, hard to pronounce, have been used to study behavioral activation systems and behavioral inhibition systems in the prefrontal cortex. Research has compared left brain hemispheric impairments in decision-making in drug addiction. Findings indicate that left brain hemispheric unbalance is also associated with increased impulsivity. Right brain hemispheric alpha frequency unbalance is associated with increased craving. Increased impulsivity, craving, and emotional responses all contribute to relapse. NIDA has funded an ongoing project to study anhedonia as both a risk factor for and a consequence of substance use. Anhedonia is a symptom of reward deficiency syndrome, So it's understandable that that it is an influencer of and a risk factor for substance use. Prolonged substance use, which spikes dopamine, causes an epigenetic alteration of the hedonic set point, which makes it more difficult to experience pleasure, gratification, and or ease. One of the main reasons that brain imaging is so important to addiction science is that researchers can see the neural brain response in real time. One seminal study of importance is the meta-analysis of addiction risk factors, including hemispheric lateralization and electromagnetic imbalances. This study contrasted hundreds of studies that were out there, and I'm going to skip all of the neuroscience lingo to just tell you that what this means is that relapse is initiated on a cellular and molecular level in subconscious portions of the brain long before it ever reaches the level of conscious awareness. And this is brain science at its best. The very act of using drugs or engaging in repetitive behaviors such as gambling or binge eating, which create flood doses of dopamine, creates the epigenetic response. It actually causes our brain to recode or transcribe its DNA. And this is known as epigenetic insult because it adds insult to pre-existing injury. Those with dopamine deficiency or deregulation experience reduced dopamine availability. And this is the recipe for drug use reinstatement or relapse. It's the same principle with opioid use. The very act of taking these drugs sets up a cascade response, which diminishes their effectiveness. And what these advances mean for those still suffering is that help is available right now. You just have to look outside the box of traditional SUD treatment to find it. The challenge before the practitioner world is not as easy as just embracing what's new. It seems that there's a whole structure between the research world and the practitioner world, which is clogged up with red tape and institutional protocol. From the ABC, the government health institutions, and from insurance that won't pay for this. So there is a challenge. It's not just that the practitioners can easily choose what they want to deliver. While the practitioner world is beginning to shift to integrate reward deficiency syndrome and the neurodevelopmental model of addiction, the research world will continue to explore the connections between addiction, chronic pain, obesity, depression, stress, inflammation, and dementia. The All Foundation provides resources, referrals, and hope. We also provide access to GARS screening, nutraceuticals, and potential research study participation on RDS. So if you need us, call us. And that's all I have. And I want to thank you for allowing me to present.